Psychology says if you grew up in the 1970s, there's a good chance you developed personality traits that are becoming surprisingly rare today. Traits that younger generations often struggle to understand. And for a long time, you may have even wondered if something about you was different. Maybe you felt tougher than most people, more independent, less easily shaken by life. The truth is, that difference isn't a flaw. It's the result of how your mind was shaped during a very unique time in history. If you grew up during the 1970s, your brain developed in an environment that demanded resilience, adaptability, and independence. Childhood looked very different back then. Less supervision, fewer digital distractions, more real-world problem solving. And psychology tells us that environments like this create adults who think, react, and process emotions differently. So, if you've ever felt slightly out of sync with modern culture, you're not broken. Your mind was simply trained under a different system. And there are real psychological reasons behind the traits you carry today. The way you handle stress, the way you form relationships, the way you approach responsibility. Many of these behaviors aren't random personality quirks. They're deeply wired responses shaped by the era you grew up in. Once you understand them, something interesting happens. Things about yourself that once felt confusing suddenly start to make sense. One of the first traits many people from the 1970s developed is quiet resilience. Back then, life didn't always offer immediate comfort or solutions. If something went wrong, you usually had to figure it out yourself. Psychologists call this early autonomy. When children regularly solve problems without constant adult intervention, the brain learns persistence. So while others may panic under pressure today, you often stay steady. What some people mistake for emotional distance is actually emotional strength. Another trait is a powerful sense of independence. Growing up in the 70s often meant long hours of unstructured time. Kids explored neighborhoods, made their own decisions, learned through trial and error. This created what psychologists describe as internal locus of control, the belief that you influence your own outcomes. That's why you may naturally rely on yourself rather than waiting for approval or external validation. What others call stubbornness is often just self-trust. You may also notice that you're less easily impressed by surface-level trends. The 1970s encouraged practical thinking. Entertainment wasn't algorithm-driven. Information wasn't instantly available. People had to observe more carefully and think more critically. This developed strong pattern recognition in the brain. In modern psychology, this is linked to deeper cognitive filtering. It means you tend to look beyond appearances and focus on what actually matters. Now, here's something important to remember. If you recognize yourself in these traits, you're not alone. Many people who grew up in that era share the same mental wiring. But because the world has changed so quickly, these qualities sometimes feel misunderstood. A culture built around speed and constant validation doesn't always recognize the quiet strength of patience, endurance, and grounded thinking. Yet those traits are exactly what keep people stable when life becomes unpredictable. Another rare trait often seen in people raised during the 1970s is emotional self-regulation. Back then, emotions weren't constantly analyzed or displayed publicly. People learned to process feelings internally before reacting. Psychology shows that this builds strong emotional regulation circuits in the brain. So when others are overwhelmed by stress or conflict, you often stay composed. Not because you don't feel deeply, but because your mind learned how to contain and process those feelings effectively. There's also a strong sense of loyalty that tends to form in people from that generation. Relationships were often built through shared experiences rather than constant communication. You showed up for people. You stayed when things were difficult. This created deep social bonds. Today, when connections can sometimes feel temporary or transactional, that loyalty stands out. What some might call old-fashioned is actually a rare form of emotional commitment, and perhaps the most powerful trait of all is perspective. Growing up before the digital age means you experienced a slower, more grounded rhythm of life. Your brain remembers what the world felt like without constant noise and comparison. That perspective creates mental balance. It allows you to step back, Evaluate situations calmly and avoid being pulled into every passing trend or crisis. So if you ever felt like you didn't fully fit the pace of the modern world, there's a reason. Your mind was shaped during a time that built resilience, independence, loyalty, and perspective in ways that are becoming increasingly uncommon. You were never broken. You were built differently, and the traits you carry today may be exactly what the modern world needs more of. If this made you reflect on your own personality, stay curious. Subscribe and keep exploring the psychology behind who you are. Because sometimes the most powerful discoveries aren't about changing yourself. They're about finally understanding the mind you've had all along.